I just assume you're friends because I was able to annoy you years ago. I got to thinking about everybody, especially Dora. I used to come over and see you over there. Dora knows what I'm talking about. Used to be Dora Peak when she was a growing girl, still going to school. And thinking of you and Werner and Wesley, Wake High, and Kenneth. Because you used to be part of my agenda, coming over to buy some milk or something. And Werner, he'd come out and he'd see me out there and he'd say, "Hello there, you crazy devil." All in fun, of course. That was just like saying, "Hello there, doll. Hello, young friend." And I remember you, Dora, when you had that baby in the back room of the old big house over there. Let's see, the first one, that was Wesley. Next day you was out in the kitchen. Next morning you was out in the kitchen helping your ma fry potatoes for the boys to go to work in the field. A long time ago. And those years passed by, and as I get older, I look back and I think I should have treasured the things a lot more. I remember your sister that used to be there at home with you that passed away. Old Lena. I went out with her and I was thinking about planting seed this year, and when I did, I came to some of those seeds that she was planting where it was all on a tape. Nowadays they call it new fashion. Shucks, that was old fashioned when I was a kid, because she was the one doing the planting out in that garden out there just west of the house. Yeah, well, I don't know. It's hard for me to think of anything to say. I wish you'd get the letter or write me a note or something, Dora. It won't take a bit of time. I know, unless you got arthritis so bad, or just plain tired. And if you are, then I'll just understand. It's okay, kid. And I got to thinking about Ralph's wife out there, Miss Everett's. She never knew me too good, but I knew Ralph quite well. He was always a friendly guy. Like we say, he trucked us out of a lot of trouble once in a while out there on the farm when he come out with that big old truck and load up a bunch of hogs and got rid of those stickers. He always had something pleasant to say. He's a pleasant guy to be around. And of course, we got the other Miss Noser that's staying near the place. She was Werner's brother's wife. I remember that when they stopped out to Hamlin's one time in the blizzard. They were riding in an old cutter and they was going across country, and the cutter kept tipping over and snow was about that deep. So they came in, Hamlin's put them up for the night, and the boys took the horse down to the barn and got it squared away. And I know the next morning that cutter would have been full of snow if the boys hadn't put an old horse blanket over the top of the seat. And then they went on their way. That's just life moving along. And I get to thinking of all these different ones. Harold Sword out, you stinker, you. You remember? You used to drive that old pickup truck for West Brothers. You come flying through town there, you're getting home for dinner about 12 o'clock. This kid is just out of school. And you'd end up with a whole bunch of kids on the car, and we always had to make a jump for it. We couldn't touch that car when it was running, and we'd be standing on the ground because we'd get knocked on our tails. But we'd run out and make a jump for it. If we lit fire, if we didn't, we just got crumpled up in the dust, no problem. That was a big event in our day. We were able to catch that old pickup truck. It had that chain vise on the back, or that pipe vise on the back of it. And all these old times come back, and I think of you, Hazel, there at home. And, let's see. Remember the time I came over to plant peas for you, and we didn't get any water. We had rain ordered, but it seemed like the Lord didn't provide it for us. I remember I sprouted them the night before and planted them, and everything went fine, except if we'd have had more rain. They sprouted all right, and then it grew. If we'd had things like we do now, if Harold had thought about it, got on a stick and got one of the little old cheap pumps over there, way to pump water on it, or turned water out of the faucet and watered it, and then it grown. And Herman Stegay, mechanic from way back. Remember I came to Pine Island one time with a homemade tractor. I'd go out there in the country with that thing, and farmers couldn't hardly go through with a team of horses and a sleigh. I stopped down there near the city hall in front of your garage, you and your brother, and everybody came out and looked at it. I had a 1921 Ford hooked up to a 26 Chev transmission, and it was really fouled up, but I could go places where a Jeep couldn't go. I like to work and stuff like that. And I got to thinking about the Haywards. Jolly and Morris came way down to Pine Island one time just to hear me sing. At least that's what they said. I hope they were doing it to flatter me. But Carol Rue and I and Richard Block were going to sing We Three Kings of the Orient at a church party up at the old Opera House. The snow was about that deep, like we say knee-high to a elephant, and walked down the railroad tracks. I forget if Fred came along that time or not. He used to make it into town every now and then. He made it to town every day anyway to get his mail. And never did get buried, I don't think. Remember the Haywards when they used to come to town one time when Morris and his dad and Cecil came into town with a hay rack. And they didn't have no shirts on, but they had their overalls on, but they were barefooted and sockless. They were happy-go-lucky. They were sitting on the edge of that old hay rack, and they was laughing their heads off at something. They all seemed to be such a jolly people to get along with. Nothing seemed to bother them. Even Wallace was a happy old man. He was doing the driving, and he had his three boys with him. He was a crusty old character. Thought a lot of Wallace. We went out and planted potatoes one time in April back home. We got a snowstorm, and I just knew very well it wouldn't grow, but they did. He had a marvelous crop of potatoes. He just happened to catch it just right. Oh, it's hard for me to think of things, but when I think of Pine Island, it isn't hard to think of it at all. And you guys probably remember me just as a kid and run up and down the streets with a bicycle, whooping, hollering, and singing my head off and yodeling up on the hill. I remember Art Bowles told us in Pine Island one time, they heard me yodeling. I'd gone up on Chance's Hill, and I took to yodeling so people wouldn't throw shoes at me or something. And I like to go by myself. It was a nice moonlight night, and I just like a doggone coyote out there calling to a lady friend. I yodeled. Art Bowles brought it back down to the butter factory, telling about it one day. Said he heard Dorsey way out there yodeling his head off. It just came as clear as a bell. He even said it's pretty. I hope it was. I didn't try to annoy anybody. But singing was easier for me to do than crying anyway. Didn't hurt near so much either. You can cover up a lot of sorrow with a good song, seems like. Well, it seemed like I always had plenty of that to cover up. Well, I'll stop this for a second, see what I've got written on here. One thing I can always think about is Pine Island and 4th of July. That was the day. Uncle John would go up on top of Chance's Hill, and he'd do what they call blowing an anvil. I never did see it happen, but I'd hear the boom. He'd pass our place in the morning. We'd be up at 4 o'clock. And because things started popping on 4th of July around Pine Island, people would wake up, I guess. And we'd hear that boom. Well, and after a while, we'd have breakfast. Monette, she'd always make me change my pants so I looked a little better. We could always go up barefooted. That was the privilege on the 4th of July. Blue chambray shirt. She'd give me a whole 15 cents all my own, and Uncle John, he'd contribute to it sometimes with a whole quarter and deal. He'd toss in a quarter. I'd get me a whole bunch of things. Now, I don't want to be one of these people talking about black people, because they always call them nigger chasers. You put them on the sidewalk and you crush your heel on them. Of course, I didn't get any of those, but I had to duck them. So boy, when they started to splatter, if you was barefooted, you got it. Anyhow, up in front of that old Pine Island Hotel, you'd find your regular people up there. And be Andrew Jewell, and I think his sister, yes, it was his sister that was the wife to Frank Rue. And, that'd be Ben Levitt. He'd be up there. And, let's see, Gus Breidenfeld. He'd be up there. All watching things happening. And before I get carried away too far, I got to remember Grandma Driggs in the old days. Almost anybody in your hometown could correct somebody else's kid, and nobody'd get mad at you for it. Well, anyhow, Stanley Wacklin and all that, I guess it's Stoddard boy, the older Stoddard boy, was having a battle right there in that curved, there's kind of a little hill in the concrete there, kind of a, well, where you go up to Jewel's drugstore, coming from the north. And I guess they'd been standing in front of that, and Josephine Kiley'd been making eyes at him. She was a pretty girl, rather buxom, brown eyes, pretty. And some little thing was said, and it started the real set of fireworks there, not even being 4th of July. And they got in the battle, and they were really ripping it up. And Grandma Driggs come along, and she would carry a umbrella, rain or shine. And if it rained, she had it. If it was too hot, she had it. If she needed protection, she had it. Well, this particular time, she didn't need protection. She was going to run a little corrective institution all by herself. Those two guys was fighting. She couldn't get up that walk without getting bumped around them. So she just started wearing them out with it and telling them, you just wait till I see your mother, you young scallywags. You just wait. They'll probably romp you real good when they get you home. You know, it's funny, those guys looked at each other, shaded themselves, and they quit, and they got over to one side so Grandma Driggs could get up there. Nobody got mad. It was just Grandma Driggs, and she fought the way through. She fought the good fight. Well, anyhow, 4th of July again. Everybody seemed to have their little stand out in the street. Mr. Stoddard, he'd have his popcorn wagon going, that little old-fashioned Tunerville business. He'd have his popcorn going. Every now and then that little engine in there, a little steam engine. Oh, we like to stand and watch that. That was an attraction. And that would turn over the popper. And pretty good popcorn, too. I guess it tastes better than when you're a kid. And then you got it for a nickel a bag, and you got a great big fat bag with a striped bag. And that there'd help you kind of keep yourself organized. And you go across the Marsh's drugstore. It was over there with Andrews. It used to be Andrews Saloon. And that's another story, too. But anyhow, we go there, he had all kinds of 4th of July stuff, firecrackers and what all. And you could go into Wallace Jewel, and he had a few more to buy in there. And then we started, and we had those 3-inch torpedo firecrackers, they used to call them. I remember one time out to west of Pine Island there, we were the Ottoman boys that came over to, let's see, Wyman's. Lester Wyman. By the way, I met him out in Washington a year or two before he died. Anyhow, they had that apple. They left Pine Island for an apple farm. Anyhow, Louis Ottoman, while they was firing the firecracker, and I suppose Louis would remember it. Maybe he'd remember it, maybe not. But anyhow, they light a big old 3-inch firecracker and throw it out there in the pasture. And this was in the afternoon. And they handed Louis one, he lit it, and he held on to it with the very back end of it as a tip. And he held on, and kept telling him, Arnold said, throw it, Louis. Louis didn't think fast enough. It blew up. It blew up. He looked so surprised. I suppose it jarred his finger, and he didn't say nothing. He didn't cry. Turned red, but he didn't cry. I'll always remember that. Those are the little things that come back to your mind. They may not mean nothing to you folks back there, but to me they mean a lot, because it was part of my life in Pine Island. There was so much sadness and gladness, I guess, for everybody. You kind of had to sort out the parts you wanted the most. Oh, I remember my grandmother bought a coaster wagon for me once there, and I'd always have to use it to help her carry her laundry home. She'd wash out her clothes ruts. And he was going along, and he had me sit on the wagon to hold the carrots and the radishes and other stuff together. And I got my toe caught in one of the wheels. Oh, did it ever cut a gash. Everybody said it cut to the bone, but I wasn't within probably a quarter of an inch at the bone, but it felt like it chopped right through my shin. Anyhow, it was bleeding to beat all get out, and he just kept me going right over. He run all the way up to Kopecki. He used to have that tailor shop in what used to be the telephone office. And that was a tailor shop. And Mrs. Kopecki was a very quiet-sounding little lady. They were a Bohemian extract. And she got a pan of water, washed my foot, and Mr. Kopecki took it in my foot in his lap, and he put a piece of cloth on his lap so he wouldn't get bloody. And they washed it tight, washed it off nice and clean, and he took a curved needle. Now you couldn't do that. Nowadays they'd arrest you for practicing medicine without a license, but he did. He put in a couple stitches in there, and it hurt so bad anyway, I didn't hardly feel the stitches. But he took a couple of stitches in there and drew the wound together, and Mrs. Kopecki wrapped it all up. I was just good as new, and I was better than new. I had something to show everybody. I had a wound. I had a rag around my toe. That was something to brag about then. And I liked Kopecki's. They were friends of Kaiserlich's. I think they were buried down at Chatfield now after they passed away. They were very good friends with the Kaiserlichs, who were also Bohemian people. He was the old butcher there. He was a good butcher too, clean, golly. You know all that blown-in sausage he used to make? Caution, you can't buy it anymore. All this manufactured stuff with all these minerals and all these chemicals in them nowadays. The only chemical he had in there was hickory smoke and good old Pine Island water to wash them up and clean them up good before he run them into the casing. Put them in, they'd boil them in a big old hogshead, they called it. Then he'd put them in the smoker. Chick Andrews used to work for him quite a bit in there. I guess a Sydney. We all supposed to call him Chick. He'd help out in there quite a bit. Oh, that was quite an old town when you start looking back over the different people that lived there. I always figured I was alone. All I had was Bonnet and Deal and Uncle John, my mother and two sisters and stepfather. That was another family entirely. I was never really integrated with them too much, but I used to think I had no family. I got out here to Washington, rather here in Oregon one time, they had a reunion of the Nashes. Oh, good heavens, my great-grandmother and a grandmother and an aunt were Nashes, and there was close to 800 of them out here just in one bunch. Well, then I got to worrying about other people in the family, and there's around 600 Kimptons in this country. They came from Kimpton, a little town in England called Kimpton, England. They were quite an illustrious family, had a coat of arms and everything. But I never knew that when I was a kid. I was just Dorsey Devens without a father. And I had a father. I was just legal as anybody in that town. But I was never allowed to claim Charles Milton as my dad, because my own personal women folks didn't like him. He was a hypnotist. They called him, Charles Milton. He nicknamed me Charlie Put Him to Sleep. There's a little kid nickname. I didn't like it too good because I didn't really know what it really meant. But I found out later he was a hypnotist with a show. But he left Pine Island, and I'm glad he did, because those women folks of mine, there was another kettle of fish. They were pretty good to me in lots of ways, but I just couldn't hack it sometimes. Anyhow, when I started looking up all of our relatives, well, the woods was full of them. I wasn't allowed to go down to Beaufort and Blue Earth because my grandmother said you go down there and associate with the Kimptons down there, you'll have them home to support all winter. And Uncle George Johnson, he was another part of the family. He came home up there to one time, and he came in, oh boy, he was a raggedy old man. Gee, he looked like a tramp. Came walking in, and he told my grandmother, he said, well, I'm glad to find you, Nettie. I walked many a mile to find you. He said, now I'm home to stay. He says, I'll tell you what I want to do. I'll make a deal with you. I'd like to board with you. And he says, I don't care anything for cakes and pies. Just plenty of meat. That's all. Meat and potatoes. And he said, if I can stay here with you, he said, and he paused. He said, I'll give you, and then he paused, $2.50 a week My grandmother's jaw dropped. She couldn't see any profit in that. After all, he'd have ate that much at a meal. He was a whopper. So she let him know in a kind way that she didn't feel like she was capable of taking care of his needs, and that she lived alone so long, and that she didn't feel like she wanted anybody able to try Johnny. Well, he'd already been down to Johnny, and Johnny told him no, that was Monet's brother. Yeah. Uncle Johnny was another person. He never cared much for home cooking either. How many times he came up to our home and even in the wintertime, he'd bring some little thing up for me. I still got a sled, a little old sled called King of the Hill that he gave me. I still got it, because I got so few things, it wasn't hard to take care of them. And anyhow, he went down to Uncle Johnny to get by on raw bacon for in there. He'd taken fried bacon, that old gas stove he had. Oh, that was a treacherous thing. He'd get down there and he'd light it to buy that little building. He used to sit across the mill farm. Well, the years passed by, and I was up to Walter's place, and she told him where she borrowed it from or got it from. And so it seemed just like history really repeating itself. Time had came around, and the clock had gone around, and came back to 12 again. That's a long time ago. It looks kind of strange how things really will work out.